Hello everyone, good evening. I'm sharing my screen. So we need to understand how a decision model process in VCS works, guys. Let me log into Voice instance. And we've created a travel approval process earlier, right? Wherein employee submits a travel request, it goes through approval. And after approver approves it, we are creating an invoice in ERP. And before that, we created a travel approval process. And in the travel approval process, what would happen? Employee would submit a travel request. It would go to approver. After approver approves it, we are sending out a confirmation message to the employee. So in this travel approval process, let's say a client has asked you, asked you to plug in some decision-making logic into it. So what client says is, Prasad, if a travel request is submitted, okay, so let's say they give you a criteria like this. They give you a criteria like this. Okay, so they give you a criteria like this and they say, Prasad, if a travel request is submitted with amount more than 1,000, and if the country of travel is India and France, and if the request is submitted more than 15 days in advance, we need to auto approve the travel request. We don't need to send the invoice, we don't need to send the travel request for approval. We have to just auto approve it. And if the amount is less than or equal to 1,000, countries India and France again, if the amount is less than or equal to 1,000, we don't really worry whether they have submitted a less than or more than 15 days in advance. We don't really care when they submit a request as long as amount is less than 1,000. India and France, we don't care when they submit a request. We have to auto approve the request. And if the amount is more than 1,000 and if it is submitted more than 15 days in advance, again, we need to auto approve it. And if the amount is more than 1,000, and it doesn't really matter what country it is, if the number of days before, and if the travel request is submitted less than 15 days in advance, amount more than 1,000, submitted less than 15 days in advance, only in that case, we have to send it for approval. Okay, so we need to create a travel approval app. And in the travel approval application, whenever a requester submits a request, it should be auto-approved in 3 scenarios. Amount more than 1,000, submitted more than 15 days in advance. Amount less than 1,000, doesn't really matter when the request is submitted. It has to be auto-approved. And when the amount is more than 1,000, days before travel should be less than 15 days. And it has to be false. So if the amount more than 1,000, less than 15 days, it has to be sent over for approval. So if you have to plug in this kind of a decision-making logic into a VCS app, it is not easily possible. You cannot directly plug it into the application. And that's exactly where we make use of a decision model. That's exactly where we make use of a decision model process. So how do we do this? How does it work? So before we create a decision model process, I'm going to clone this application, travel approval app, and I'm going to call this as UG63. Use decision model in VCS. Or let me call it as travel approval app with the decision model in it. And there are a couple of changes that I need to make within the process, especially within the form. especially within the form. So before I create a decision model application, and the application that we're going to build, right after it is fully complete, this application is going to look like this. As soon as employee submits a request, we call a decision application here, and we pass in the inputs here, like or whatever is the date of travel and whatever is the current date, we pass those two as inputs, and we also pass the cost as input to what? Date of travel, cost, and based on the inputs and the destination as well, and based on those inputs, we decide here whether it has to be auto approved or not. And if it is auto approved, we would, instead of sending it to end event, we would send out a notification saying that your travel is approved, go ahead and book the travel. So we will map this to here, not to the end node. We would mark it here. And if it is not auto approved, then we send it to a requester. So it's like earlier we were sending a request directly to the approver. Now we call a decision model to see if approval is required or not. And only if its approval is required, we send it to the approver. This is how it is going to look like. Now, a couple of changes I need to make. So we would be creating this decision model application in a moment. And before I do that, I need to make a couple of changes in this one. So at the moment, we don't have country of destination. At the moment, we don't have country of destination. So we need to add a select list here. We need to add a select checkbox here called country of destination. So this is not the field that you need. I need a select checkbox. And if you scroll down, you can mention a static list of options here. So I want to see these details. The country names, a list of country names here. And for the cost, the upper limit needs to be around 1,000. So we can mention a minimum and a maximum value, and you can also mention a default value as well. And we also need to remember the start date and the end date of the travel that you have, right? So these are basically the date fields. So instead of adding them as a date field, we have to add it as a date and a time field. We have to add it as a date and a time field. Okay. Now we go back, and we need to create a decision application now. So I can create a decision model here. I can create a decision here, but the decision application that you create here can only be used within this PCS application. But if you want to create a decision model, that you should be able to use it in other PCS apps as well. In such cases, you don't have to create it as a local decision. Instead, you have to create it as an external decision, meaning you go into the applications, under applications, you see decision application, and you can create it from here. And you create it as a decision application, and you call it as UG63 travel decision. And when you create a decision application, this is how it is going to look like. You need to map the input data first. What are the details that you want to receive as input? And what are the details that we want to receive as input base, first of all, into the PCS app, into the decision model. We want to receive 4 things as input: travel amount, current date, date of travel, and country of travel. Okay, so we need to change the first one. and what data type it is. You can change it to a number data type. And we also receive other inputs as well. Current date. And you select it as date and time. Date of travel. Country of travel. So you receive 4 inputs into the PCS process, sorry, this decision model, and you would have to call and you would have to use all of them to take a decision. Okay. Now the first thing that I need to do is I need to calculate the how many days in advance the request is being submitted. Because if you look at the decision model that we need to plug in, right? So what's the logic that we see, guys? Yes, I need country and I need travel amount. Okay, I need country and I need travel amount. I get these two. But another input that I need is days before travel. So how many days in advance the request is submitted? So how do I get that days in travel? How many days in advance the travel request is submitted? So I have to subtract up. So I need to do a date of travel minus the current date and convert it into the number of days. So these are all the decision types that you can use in here. And I would use an expression decision here. And I'm going to call it as days before travel. And I want to use these two fields in here. And what is it that we want to do? Date of travel minus current date slash, and we want to convert this into days, right? We want to convert the date of travel minus current date into days. And to do that, I have to use this particular string. So I need to say duration P1D. So which means I'm going to get back the duration in a period of 1 days, or in the day units, you would get the result here as a day units. Okay. Now I need to go ahead and configure a decision table here, and you call it as auto approve. Auto approved. And you would add the travel amount, country of travel, and the days of travel. And I need to configure the inputs and outputs. So what are the 3 inputs that you want to receive as input, guys? So the 3 inputs that you get is travel amount, and I need to add another one, country of travel. And in the case of travel amount, in case of enter allowed values, you can say that it is a number, or you just say auto, that's fine. Let's leave it that way. And in case of country of travel, we want to give user an option to select 3 options there. I'm going to say select, and I say list of values. And I'm going to mention the values as France and India. I'm going to enter it as France and India. And I also need one more input here, which is going to be days before travel. And you can say auto, that's fine. And we would also call this as auto approved. And you enter it as a Boolean value here, true or false. And we need to add the values here. So if the travel amount is more than 1,000, and if the country is India, and if the request is submitted 15 days in advance, then you have to auto approve the request. More than 1,000, 15 days in advance. And I can copy this request, add in a new row, and I can paste it in there. And if the amount is less than 1,000, it doesn't really matter whether it is submitted more than 15 days in advance or less than or equal to 15 days in advance. More than 1,000, more than 15 days, true. Less than 1,000, it could be less than or greater than 15 days, doesn't really matter. It has to be auto approved. And the final one, if the amount is more than 1,000, and if the request is submitted less than or 15 days, less than or equal to 15 days, we have to select it as false here. Okay. And now that we have configured this decision model, we can go ahead and test it as well to see how it works. So I say the travel amount is 1,200 more than 1,000. And today's date is 21st. I want to travel, say 23rd or 24th. Okay, in the next 3 days. Country of travel, let's say India. So amount is more than 1,000 and I want to travel in the next 3 days, which is less than or equal to 15 days. And since the country of travel is India, when I start the test, what would happen? You see the output is false. Okay, so the result decision would not be auto approved because it goes into the fourth option, greater than 1,000, less than 15 days. And the output would be false. And if I go back and say change this, instead of 29th, if I say 24th, if I say 23rd of March, okay, it is more than 15 days time. So since it is more than 15 days in advance that request is being submitted, even though the amount is more than 1,000, it gets auto approved. It gets auto approved. Now that this is working as expected, I can go ahead and activate it. And after we activate it, what is it that we're going to do? We go to the process. And you go to our decisions. And I need to add a decision here, external decision that is already activated. And I'm picking up UG63 here. And I'm linking that external decision that I've created here. And after you link a decision here, we would be able to go ahead and use the decision model here. Yeah, as soon as employee submits a travel request, it goes to this decision model. And after it goes to the decision model, Okay, looks like there is no decision service in there. There's one step that we missed. We need to mention before we activate it, right? We need to go ahead and decide how we want to expose it as. So you click on the settings here. Sorry, not settings. Go into services and you can add it as a new service here. So you say UG63. Travel decision service. And what is going to be the input? These four things we need to pass as input. And what is going to be the output? Auto approve, true or false. Well, this decision service is what we missed earlier. I'm going to reactivate it now. I'm going to delete this as well. And I would link the decision first here. And you go to the process. We should be able to see that as soon as the requester submits a request, it would go to the decision model first. And what is it that we're going to call this as? We're going to call this as travel decision. And to the travel decision, we need to pass in the input and outputs first. We need to do the data association. And in the input data association, first of all, what is it that we need to pass as input, guys? We need to pass in travel amount as input. Which is nothing but the cost. Country of travel. I would say country of destination. Date of travel. That is a start date. And the current date. Current date, you can represent it this way. You have to mention it as now. So if you mention it as now, that means the current date and time would be assigned to this particular field. And we also need to get the output of a data model, and we want to capture that output in a variable here. So I call it as auto approval data object. And I'm going to create it as a Boolean data type. It's going to have a value of either true or false. And in the open data association, so after we pass the required inputs here, cost, country of travel, date, and so on. And the output that we get here, which is nothing but an interpretation. This is what we need to store in the auto approval data object. Okay. And we also need to have a gateway here. And we need to check if the request is auto approved or not. And if it is, if it is auto approved, we want to send it to the notification directly. We want to send a notification to the employee. And if it is not auto approved, then we send it to the approver here. And in case of auto approval, we would configure it as a default branch, no condition there. But in case of no, we need to check if that task outcome auto approval data object is equal to. So what's the condition that we need to write here, guys? We need to check.
False.
Yeah, is equal to false here. If the auto approval is false, we want the process to go into this particular flow, send it to the approver. Otherwise, we consider it as auto approved. Now let's activate it. Test in workspace. And I'm going to test the travel approval process. I'm going to say Prasad. I'm entering my email there. I say I want to start today. And I want to, start. I want to travel, say on 23rd, after 2 days from now, and I want to come back on 28th. So the start date is important for us. So Prasad wants to travel in the next 2 days. And if the approval request is for say 800, remember the amount is less than 1000. So as per the approvals that we have configured, if the amount is less than 1000, so it doesn't really matter whether you submit 15 days in advance or not, it has to be auto approved if the amount is less than 1000. So in the country of destination, I say India. I would say user 1 and approver 1. And we go ahead and submit this. You see a request now, you see a process instance. And if you see the process instance, it has automatically completed. And if you look at the audit, see the flow, it started, went to a travel decision. And what's the travel decision that we have got, guys? So it is auto approved, right? Because amount is less than 1000, so we don't really care when it is submitted, we auto approve it. So since it is auto approved, it went to the notification directly. If I go ahead and start another request, and if employee wants to travel today, if employee wants to travel after 15 days, okay. And if the estimated cost is, even if it is more than 1000, so for example, 2000, that doesn't matter. Since the estimated cost is more than 1000, I think we put in a limit of 1000 there. So what did we do here? So if it is more than 1000, right? Yeah, this we have seen this. If the amount is more than 1000, if the amount is less than 1000, 2 days in advance, it is auto approved. Now let's go ahead and test this. Amount is more than 1000 is what we are selecting here, but I cannot enter a value which is more than 1000 here because that's a limit that I have put in there. So what I need to do, I need to go ahead and change the limit and reactivate the process. I think that's why I've put in a limit there as 10,000. Start date, yes. So we want to send it for approval now. So to send it for approval, amount has to be more than 1,000 and it has to be less than 15 days in time. So today's date is 21st. Let's say I want to travel after 3 days and I want to come back after 3 more days. And the estimated cost is, let's say, 1,200, more than 1,000. So the submitter is user one, approver is approver one. Go ahead and submit it. Since the amount is more than 1,000 and the request is submitted less than 15 days in advance, you see it has gone to the approver now. Because yes, so when we trigger the decision model process with the inputs, we've got a false here and we see approved, it is false. So it went to the approver now. If it is approved, it would have sent out a notification directly. Okay. So this is how with the help of a decision model, you can plug in decision-making logic into the PCS process. So be it auto approving a request or any other requirement, any other complex decision-making logic that you want to plug into the application, PCS app, this is how you do it. Any questions based from anyone?
Not in this.
Yeah, please go on with other questions.
Yeah. Prasad, I have some question in the last session. One question actually, my process is not actually running. It is going to the submitted state, but somehow the approval process is not getting triggered.
Okay. Did you make use of that? What do you call the? So the status is getting approved, marked as approved, but the process
And
is not getting triggered.
instance is created, but again, next I'm not able to debug where exactly things
Okay.
are going in.
What's the application name?
The second one, AB ERP. AB. Sorry.
You're getting the approval ask here, right? Okay, just give me one moment. So if we go in here, where do you have two applications here? This one you can delete, right? You didn't create this one, right?
Yeah, I didn't create this. You can delete it, no problem.
Okay, this is the one that you created.
Yes.
Okay, so you open up developer tools. Okay, let's pick up invoice 46.
Last one, submitted.
There is an approval process in here, right? Approval process is also initiated. And if I log into the OIC instance as an approver, what is it that I get to see? We should be able to see that approval task here, right?
Yes. That's the thing which is not happening.
Okay, you're not seeing the request here.
Yes, it is not coming here.
Okay. Go to team tasks. And you go into tracking. And that would show you the task. So first of all, your process itself might have ended in fault here. So this is where the process is ending in fault. And why is it ending in fault? So it is not able to evaluate this expression. So there is a problem with the way you have concatenated this. Okay. So what is it that you have to do? So there's a problem with the way that you have concatenated the approval process. So if you go into this instances, right? If you go into tracking, so if you go into tracking from here, and if you look at faulted, you get to see what the problem is. Now it has told me that there is a problem with the
This one only.
yeah. Go to the first one, approval process. Now here, when you mention in manager invoice reference, and what is it that you're doing here?
42.46.
Okay, so there has to be a space here. Invoice data object.id, and it should fine. And is this a data object that you have created?
No, data object is yes, this one, invoice data object. And here I choose the ID. Yeah, exactly.
So this is how it should look like. And if you mention it this way, it's going to work out. And I think you have a plus here, right? After, before and after plus, I think you didn't give the space in there.
Okay.
Let me see what is the exact issue that we see here. So if you see the fault, go to diagnostics, it says error while evaluating the expression, concatenate. So this id dot value is not appearing. So you might have used a small id, but why is invoice.id is not appearing? I think there is this value is not getting populated. So did you? Okay, so if you see here, you are populating this invoice form arguments into data object. Here, invoice data object. And that invoice data object is what you are using here. What is it that you're selecting here? You're selecting invoice data object.manager, so it should be fine.
But this space issue would be with the rest all approver as well, I think.
No,
We
that's
get
okay. At least if it crosses the first one, right? You can take it forward from there.
sure.
Now it is saying invoice data object ID. Did I activate the process after I made this change? I activated it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we go to the form. We have this invoice ID. Invoice data object is created on this form. Okay, so AV invoice form arguments.
Prasad, was I capital in the form
Yeah.
label
Which one?
in the
Yeah,
form, correct? I
in the
think I
format
was
is it
capital.
is
But here, yeah, it is coming lowercase. But if you go
no
to the
in the
form,
binding it is small letter only in the binding.
okay, okay.
I think this is where you have a problem. So you should not be using invoice details here, right? You should be using this one here. This is the one that you have to use.
Okay. But this is just a request, I think, sample request.
No, that is a sample request, that is fine. But when you go in here, right? It should not be invoice details. The name that goes in here should not be with invoice details. You can copy this code. And what you can do is you can come back in here. I think I didn't select the this name. So with that name, the approval process would be called. This is with this name, we need to pass in the payload. So what you have to do is create a variable of that data type. And you go ahead and initialize it. And I would copy the binding to the other mappings. Now this is not mapped, right?
This is for line.
So you were sending, when you were sending a payload as input to the PCS process, you were not sending it with this name, with this field name. You were sending it as invoice details. It doesn't work. Okay, that's why you are getting that issue. So I'm going to mark this invoice as requested. Pick up an invoice, edit it, and you submit it. It is showing up here now. Okay. So you can go ahead and see the invoice request and you can go ahead and act on it. Any questions, guys? So the reason behind the error that you have got is when you pass in the payload, you have to pass it with this name or whatever form name that you have, right? So whatever name that you have here, with this name, you have to pass in the payload, not invoice details. Okay.
And sir, one more thing. Yesterday's lecture is not opening up. Is it happening with me only, or I'm not sure with test or?
Okay. Did you try it out? When did you try it last time?
Just before the class.
Okay.
Is there
Checking
anybody
it
else?
now. No, the problem is there is a problem at a Google end, not just your batch recordings. Few other batch recordings were also not getting converted. And you would see a message which says it is being converted. Yeah. So this is a message that you're seeing, right? I'll re-upload the session recording along with today's session recording, and it should be up and running by tomorrow. Usually Google takes 1 hour to convert it and make it playable video, but sometimes very rarely it takes quite a bit of time. And this is the first time that's happening in almost last 3 months. I'm going to upload this recording again along with today's session recording. By tomorrow morning, you should have these 2 recordings in a playable mode.
Sure. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.